Hey everybody, we're back. We're talking about heading into year 2 for Torg Eternity. So I gotta make an adjustment here. There we go. I'm gonna first introduce myself, then let Greg and Deanna introduce themselves. Then we're gonna talk a little bit overall about year 2. We're gonna get into some questions. Some of these questions were actually asked in our last panel, but they were so right for year 2, we kind of saved them for this. So hopefully those of you that were there before are sticking around to hear some of those answers. I'm Darrell Hayhurst. I was running Torg early on. I worked on Eternity with Shane Hensley. And now I'm mostly moving on to Space 1889. I'm still helping out writing and behind the scenes. But more and more, I'm kind of moving over into that Space 1889 space. So I haven't had as much to do with year 2. So this is going to be exciting for me. So let's go ahead and intro the inimitable Deanna next.
So I'm Deanna Gilbert, and I was the author and lead author on the Nile Empire and Cyber Papacy source books, and the developer for Relics of Power Redux, which has some definite lead-ins to year 2. So just as a warning, we will probably be spoiling major parts of that adventure when we're talking about some of the ideas that we have for year 2.
I like spoilers. That's what I come to these for. And last but not least, the one, the only, Greg Gorden.
I'm Greg Gorden. I'm a former Torg developer at West End and current line developer for Torg Eternity. So I'm excited by the tweaks and strangeness that I'm hoping we can pull off in year 2. I'd like to just you are actually in the chat. You're getting a preview of what we're pitching to Marcus. So that being said, that means there could be a whole lot of change between now and later. But it's a way of making the ideas real. And to me, if you're doing a 30,000-foot view, year 1 is, hey, here's how our world works and why it's cool. Year 2 would be, and here are the events that reshape the world. So since that's a change in focus, there'll be a change in what we do for each crowdfunding in terms of, the source book won't be a pure source book. We'll have what we call a campaign book, which is going to develop a theater in the war, what's happening there, and has an adventure attached to it. The Infiniverse updates, where we'll be having that sort of be a replacement for the Delphi Council missions, because it gives us more flexibility, because we can update things that are not happening in the main theater. And finally, and some of the stuff that really gets me excited, we're doing with the unfortunate name Mini Cosm Book. Currently, the first one pledged is Reality's Edge by John and Ross Watson, where we're going to start giving, small snippets of other realities that are breaking out because as a consequence of the possibility wars, but give you new, fresh adventuring areas to just, run one-shots or, small campaigns in, as just the fabric of reality is really starting to come apart as a result of the war. So.
Awesome. So before we jump into questions and comments, the very top question was, what happened to Brian? Did Aurora get him? So he's a family guy, and his daughter's got homework to finish. And because he's intimately working on Aurora, he made time to jump in for that. But he hasn't worked on any year 2 stuff yet. So that's why he's not here. It's not that we don't love him. It's just that he loves his daughter. So we get it. We understand.
Yeah, I have him tentatively penciled in for a big chunk of the first year 2 campaign book. So, surprise, Brian.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. He's been
What are your ideas? What are you going to write? Tell me now.
Did either of you want to cover any other groundwork stuff before we get into questions?
There was one Pan Pacifica question that was asked that.
Well, look at me. If it's in the previous list, I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
When we roll through. But
yeah. Oh yeah,
okay.
Because Pan Pacifica is a later release, has it given you time to rethink your original concepts? Yes. But Pan Pacifica very much is in a state of development, so I don't really have anything concrete to give you other than sort of what we've already shown. It's not ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, and it's coming. It's the next
Yep.
one up. Yeah, like all our focus is on Aurora right now. I know I've seen some of the discussions on Pan Pacifica. I've got my own opinions on it, but again, like it's not my cosm, so my opinions don't matter. But my opinion is like the interesting thing about Pan Pacifica is people are worried that because we've had a pandemic, it plays differently now. Like, oh man, the infection and the disease and all that. And I actually thought that was the most exciting part, like being able to really say something about like COVID and how we're living now. I think that's really cool. But I also think that story might finish. So
yeah, given the fact that we're getting the vaccines, like we're starting to get those rolled out now, it feels a little bit more safer, I guess. It's not. I mean, I hesitate to say that because obviously there's a major spike in cases in the U.S. and Canada and other places, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I think by the time that Pan Pacifica comes out, and by the time people actually get the material, we're looking at summer, like early fall. So It's sort of like, knock on wood that we should be getting it definitely in the rearview mirror at that point.
So enough Pan Pacifica. Let's jump into year 2. That's what people are here for. So earlier, Ristar96 asked, we've been told the axioms of Tharkols are slipping and adjusting, and we totally saw that in Living Land as well. Is the same thing happening in other cosms?
Yes. Sort of.
Yes.
Pan Pacifica, it is sort of. The axioms are not changing, but there is a history. Well, let me back up. One of the minor world laws of Pan Pacifica is going to be the law of assimilation. And generally, what it basically is that when Pan Pacifica invades another cosm, one of its major world laws will take on one of the ones that it's invading, with the exception of the law of intrigue. The law of intrigue always is there, but the other ones will change. And that is going to be happening in this invasion as well. Essentially, the law of vengeance is going to be going away, and we haven't quite made the decision on what it's being replaced by. One of course world laws, but that is going to be happening.
Greg? And Greg, what about the rest of the world in year 2?
Well, part of I don't want to paint the authors we haven't even signed into a corner yet, but yes, one of the reactions is, as I said, the mini cosm books, where the conflict and the basically it's like a particle collider. You smash realities together, these other little mini ones spin off, so that you have unintended consequences of the possibility wars. So that's one way things change. So you get sort of local variants. And then I do want the campaign books to discuss how reality changes should one win or lose. That absolutely has to be part of, so the GM can kind of go, oh, that would really suck, or oh yes, I want that to happen. So we sort of have to give him the, if it's a bowling lane, we have to put the bumpers in place to say the ball can go like to this far or this far, but we promise you it's not jumping to the next building. Yeah. So we want to say this is how the things are going to change.
Yeah, and on the practical side of that, so I can kind of behind the scenes this. And this was something that came out of a mistake it was a printing error on our table tents. Way back when we first did the first run, we had an error on the Living Land tent. Just like one of the world laws was duplicated and one of them was skipped, and we were like, oh dang it, what are we going to do? And part of the solution to that, what I pitched as the solution, was a sticker, in part to prove that technology would work. And it was also very purposefully done that every GM screen that we've put out, the world laws and the axioms look like stickers on the front, so that as we go through, we can do like a sticker sheet for, oh, we'll win or lose, your conditions might change. You can just peel that sticker off, put it on, and update, and it'll be like your license plate. You can put sticker after sticker after sticker.
Torg legacy.
Right. I mean, kind of like that was the theory at the beginning, and hopefully that's something we can play with in year 2 and the years that go on. Like that is absolutely a tool in our toolbox. I was gonna, ask to be fed the next question, then I realized I'm the one feeding the question. So, so there's another one that got asked earlier from Ottawaton today. Is Core Earth going to get a strike back moment? Something that gives all the High Lords a moment to say, whoa, we might lose this thing.
Okay. So my current plan for the 4 crowdfundings and essentially the 4 campaigns that'll make up year 2. First one is called War of the Century, which is where Nile Empire and Aurosh start to throw down. And so that's going to show you sort of the first really major military actions involved in the war. Second one is Soul of the Americas, where you've got materialism of Pan Pacifica, cyber papacy, living land, and how that's impacting the society and resistance. The third one is Crucible. That's Europe. That's where Core Earth is going to get its best, brightest hope result of the war as Thargold, Isle, and the cyber papacy throw down. Then my last one is Dawn Never Breaks, which is on the other side with Pan Pacifica, Thargold, and Aurosh, which is like, oh, and if they don't go so well, it looks like this.
Awesome. Grey March asked, so what's Thorian going to be up to in year 2? Is he going to finally come to the fore, or is he still lacking?
Again, this is going to be one of those things like it's being proposed, so it's not a for sure thing. But one of my ideas is to have the Thorian drop a Maelstrom bridge into Eastern Canada. And essentially, we're going to end up with Isle Living Land mix zones, and we're going to be able to tap into some of the legends and stories, like the Ride of Paul Revere in Massachusetts, that we can jump into for that sort of stuff. So it's not just a European Isle, and it's something that we haven't really seen before either.
I was going to make my usual what's in Canada joke, but then I realized people don't understand that I love Canada. So when I make fun of it, that's oh crap. I've kind of gotten in trouble for doing my Canada jokes and realizing later oh, people might not get where I'm coming from. Sorry. So what do you guys have planned for Australia? That's from Ferrist.
I have I have not to give it away. I want Australia to be directly involved in the War of the Century. And the first thing, I think Australia is one of the places Mobius can expand to fairly quickly, just outside of Aurosh's reach. He needs a way to flank Aurosh. He certainly can't drop into China because that's Konoha territory. There's no real room in the east because that's either Aurosh or so he's got to go to Australia to expand. Yeah. But again, I don't want to force I'll sit down with the author and argue, here's why I think he would do this. Here's why it would be beneficial to him. So I really think it's going to be Nile Empire down under.
And we do know that Pan Pacifica, I mean, they've got a beachhead in our our canon things. Like they're there, and that actually led to one of the another question Ristar 96 was asking was, hey, that kaiju beach attack, can we get the stats for the kaiju? So one way or another, the kaiju's gonna be in the Pan Pacifico book.
Yeah.
Whether that particular scenario is written up remains to be seen, but like we do have it codified how the kaiju work and how the cards control their behavior, and I think we've done that with a couple other beasties now too.
Yeah,
or
the really big ones like the Great Dragon in Isle.
Yeah, and that was just a fun way to get even more mileage out of the deck. It's like, hey, people had to buy this deck. What else can we do to make it even more integral to the game and add those extra layers to it? So yeah, one way or another, the beastie will be there. The events depicted will probably get mentioned on the timeline. Whether we do that adventure as a published adventure or not, I know Marcus would say yes, but we'll see. Like, I might not be the one writing it. If so, like, I'll be handing over my notes or links to Saber Dice saying, well, here you go. This is the stuff.
Oh, I saw a question from Forbin Project a little farther up. It says,
yeah,
will you be adding to the reality lore shown when cosms collide, such as the new cosmos sources and so on? Okay. My ultimate goal, and when I say ultimate goal, this is past year 3, so it's even more beige foam than year 2. But I want Torg to be a system that you can use for any setting that you've got cinematic action and a malleable reality. So it doesn't have to be, have to be invading High Lords and stuff. And so, yes, absolutely. In fact, one of my mental exercises is Netflix has a K-drama called Uncanny Counter, which, if you take a look at it, is Pan Pacifica meets Nile Empire. But as currently constructed, Torg would have a heck of a time simulating that, building that out as a world, whereas it should absolutely be in its wheelhouse. So the solution that is more on the cosm sources and the things like the reality weavers. So we can say, in my analogy, the corporate capitalism version of reality is what the invaders are doing now, where you can only have a destructive overlay of realities and you suck possibility energy out of them. Essentially, that's your margin. That's your profit for the invasion. But there are other methods by which reality works using similar mechanisms that aren't quite as destructive or require the same type of cosm source or the same type of reality boundary and weaver. So yes, absolutely. And the mini cosm books are where I expect to show off some of that early in year 2.
Awesome. So Majordsor, I'm probably saying that wrong, but it doesn't have enough vowels. The Infiniverse Tools has surveys for Day 1 and Rising Storm. Will there be anything similar for any of the other books? I'm especially curious about the polling mentioned at the end of Relics of Power. This is one I might have to answer too, but I'll let you guys go first.
I am not too involved in that, so I'm going to push that away.
I've looked at every spreadsheet generated, but I haven't set up too many of them.
So
yes.
So yeah, like I was the person that built those surveys, and I built surveys for the Delphi missions early on. And basically it comes down to I had to prioritize what I was working on, and what I was working on was getting the books out. We're hoping to get more, people that can do that too. So it's not kind of all on me. That hasn't happened yet, but it's going to, because it is crucial, right? For the unfolding story, we've got to find out what people are doing. And whenever we have a question like, oh, which way is this going to go? That's what answers it, is that survey data. So
it's a problem that absolutely has to be solved at a sustainable scale for, year 2.
Right. And we'll get there. Like, it's just a matter of what questions are big enough. Like it's very easy if you boil products down to a few major questions. It gets more difficult when you're like, oh, but what are the other variables that we need? And as we get into the year 2 design, which you're getting into, that's when those questions crop up. And so if you guys are really looking for spoilers, when those surveys start appearing, literally the questions that we're asking are probably spoiling what we're thinking of doing because they're going to be the most relevant ones, in terms of where these villains end up, where do they go, So I think that's a good question, and you've seen us kind of fall behind on some of those tools, like the surveys, and also the wikis fall in behind as well. I'll go ahead and mention this. We're migrating website space from the German-only website to English version. And as part of that, we're going to be working on updating those wiki pages that are all built into that. Many of you Infiniverse writers have noted that what we say in the Infiniverse is it's fair game if it showed up in the wiki, and we're behind on updating the wiki. So can we use stuff? And the legal answer is no. The unofficial answer is we intend to get all that material in there. So we're not going to come after you if you're referencing that stuff. I mean, it just doesn't, that doesn't pay dividends for us either, right? And the Infiniverse has been spectacularly successful. I mean, there's awesome, amazing amounts of content there, and it's something that Marcus has even gone out of his way to mention how impressed he is at the community that's come up for that. So support's coming. It's just that we felt like the big priority is getting year 1 books out. Like, let's move to year 2, and then we'll clean up some messes. Okay. So we've heard, this is PK Levine, that Akasha is playing a larger part than initially expected. Are we going to see more on them? Well, he doesn't ask about them, but I'm going to ask about them. What he asks is the same going to be true for Mesopotamia?
So I'll first let Deanna answer about Akasha because of Relics of Power. So
Relics of Power spoilers. All right, if you're still listening, it's your own fault. So the big thing at the end of Relics of Power is that, assuming that the players make the correct decisions or some amazing rolls, they will save the last remaining lifeboat that the Akashians have. Essentially, the Gottman did make a mistake, and he thought that he'd completely wiped him out. He hadn't quite done it. And so they will appear during the early part of year 2, and they will be landing in Hawaii. Diamond Head in particular, that specific.
Are they going to be involved in the battle for the soul of the Americas?
We haven't talked about that. I'm sure that they will be involved somehow, or exactly how that actually impacts things. We still have to talk about it.
Right.
But they are not necessarily going to be. Well, they're certainly not going to be the saviors, because they're in way more trouble than they were in original War. But they're also not entirely, the heroic types. Even though Cyrilla will be back, and she is not going to be necessarily villainous, her priority is the survival of her race. And that is the thing that matters most to her. And so that might put them at odds at times with the Delphi Council.
Noise. So I think we've kind of covered this one. Forbin Project. I'm going to read out the question and see if you want to add anything more, Greg. Will you be adding to the reality lore shown in When Cosms Collide, such as new cosm sources and so on?
Oh, yes. You were going to say something about Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
Oh, Mesopotamia. I'm sorry, cut you off.
It's just, I suspect Mesopotamia is going to be in the second Cosm book. The the first mini Cosm book we've already filled up, believe it or not. So it'll have to slide to the second one. But yes, I'm expecting to expand on that, as partly because of its more, two things. It's non-destructive build on reality, and the fact that it has the ability to change those two major Storm Knight, skill types. So I want to build that out a little bit more.
Right. Grey March 2000 asks, does anyone care about Antarctica?
Not really. I mean, that doesn't mean that somebody can't, come up with a great pitch or a great idea to do something, but there are no plans right now, as far as I know, to do anything. I mean, there's nobody there. And, what's the culture of Antarctica except for, penguins? I probably, insulted a lot of Antarcticans, inadvertently, but
there's really not a lot of Antarcticans to insult.
Yeah, it's just not a.
The only thing I can think of is it's possible it could appear in Crucible, because the fact that the High Lord it's a loss for the High Lords makes it a really good place for the core Earth to start setting up stuff that won't be messed with, because it's really expensive to mess with it, because there's just no possibility energy to grab. But again, I want the author to pitch stuff to me. I don't want to go, well, you also need 16 pages on whatever is happening in Antarctica.
I'm just pitching it now. Oroshian murder penguins.
Back to Greg Kostikian's 50-foot penguins of death.
We call this the complete waste of time theory. That tall would have a brain. All right, so let's see. So I'm going through the thing looking for questions. I got some comments that are pretty cool, but I'm going to stick to questions, everyone. As more of Earth gets overrun, this is, again, Forbin Project. As more of Earth gets overrun, how does this affect how the Delphi Council fights the war?
Not as much as you might think. As long, sure, it's better to have bases outside of the invading realms, but they would be prepared for that, contingency if they get, Europe gets overrun. What happens? Well, they start having to fight from inside. It certainly gets more difficult, but it's not like the Delphi Council will go away.
But no morality decay?
Well,
as I said, for me, the two books that are really going to discuss that are Crucible and Dawn Never Breaks. Because in Crucible, that's where the backbone has been built, and they come up with whatever it is they come up with. The only spoiler I've got, I don't want to give away at this point, because the author may just go, that's too hard. Like, okay, fine. But what happens when you compromise yourself a little bit too far is what happens in Dawn Never Breaks. So the Delphi mission has, they're not a monolith. They do try different courses of action, and it's, kind of working out and kind of not working out.
Yeah. And our intent has been from the beginning that even if there is desperation, which is one of the key words for the war, we probably won't be seeing high-end, morality decay from the Delphi Council, because we want to keep that as a structure that heroes can trust and can remain our framework for telling stories. So, I mean, things can get bad, but at least that one variable is probably going to remain intact as we go.
Right. Well, part of it is just, at least for me, the nature of the choices you make when the realms involved are Rorsch, Pan-Pacifica, and Tharcold are going to tend to be grayer, even if you're looking for the most positive possible outcome. So it's not really a fair competition, because in some ways Malraux is moderately incompetent, and you can maneuver around him. And Tharcold and Isle have bits that you can flip against them. But both Aurorsch and Pan Pacifica are just cosm-eating machines. So it's really hard to take them on.
All right. Forbin Project says, it sounds like the High Lords are fighting each other in year 2. Is this going to be a hot war or a cold war?
Yes.
Again,
Yeah.
War of the Century, hot.
Yeah.
Soul of the Americas, cold. Crucible, probably hot. Dawn Never Breaks, more cold. But it's just going to be, so there'll be degrees of viciousness in that case. You have a not as vicious Cold War and a really vicious Cold War versus a hot war that is sort of like small units versus Mobius is going to freaking use those divisions he has because, he's got them. Why wouldn't he?
All right. Malgus asked about the space gods, if they're going to be incorporated. I think we've kind of covered that one. So I apologize if I'm reading these out loud. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anyone as we go forward here. What do you think is the change that will make GMs go, whoa, in year 2? That was asked by Forbin Project.
I don't know. I'm surprised sometimes what actually gets traction and what doesn't. So it's sort of like, I guess the way that I could put it is this sort of the ideas that I have that I like really a lot.
Go ahead.
And the 2 were, was dropping Isle into Canada and Malraux taking Los Angeles. Essentially, there's going to be a miracle of Los Angeles and cyber papacy instead of them. And so now we're going to get cyber papacy, living land, mixed zones.
I think the one, I'm not sure I want to spoil this. Let's just say Mobius has a crazy plan that really could only work if his opponent is Aurorsch, which is why he's taking Aurorsch on first. And when you see that plan, you go like, that's nuts, but sort of genius, but nuts.
That's Mobius.
So, yeah, exactly. And it has at least a snowball's chance of hell of working. He's picked a number of options right. So Mobius actually coming up with something that can at least inconvenience the Gotman in a very serious way and possibly actually, defeat him, as I think, I would not expect that if I just looking at the 2 of them going, oh, well then, okay.
My big woe is seeing whatever High Lord Volkov does next. So Forbin Project asks, will there be a Core Earth book as well as the campaign guides?
I don't know. And this is just because until we get a significant amount of go-ahead from Marcus and other parts of Ulisses Spila, I don't know if we're going to be pretty much limited to 3 books per crowdfunding, or if we can roll out books partially in PDF like we did with Relics of Power, in which case, if we're allowed to do the partial rollout to the final book, then you will see elements of Core Earth and of updated Torg rules and stuff like that coming out in PDF first to show up in book form later. So, but I can't promise that because I don't know that that's in our wheelhouse for production.
Right. In the original design for year 2, the 2 books were the Akashians and the Delphi Council. And we've got a lot of material written between the primers and Core Earth specific, miracles and psi powers and all that. So we've actually got quite a bit of material for that Delphi Council / Core Earth book. It's just a matter of where it lands in the production schedule. It's going to happen somehow, some way.
Yes.
For the Akashians, though, it's going to be hard, I think, to fill 144 pages. I think that's kind of the bottom line. And so unless it's one of these extra books that happens to be thinner, or if it's part of a,
So, and this has been here's the the nice thing on the production side for year 2, right? Year 1, we wanted to keep things very consistent from box to box to box, in part because I'm OCD like that. Like I've got that collector bug, which means if we start doing something for one cosm, we'd better do it for all of the cosms. And we're locked into that. And we're almost done. Whew. And one of the really exciting things about year 2 is we're not locked into those formats. So if we're like, oh, what we really want is to do an 80-page organization book, we can. Like it has, like we're not stuck, in a rotation. That'll be part of your discussion with Marcus. That'll be part of your pitch for those. And it doesn't even have to be a standalone book. It could be a portion of of one of these books, right? Let's see here. We mentioned Hawaii, Q Brian. Let's see here. That's a Pan Pacifica question. Won't someone please think of the penguins? I did. I'm thinking of the penguins. They'll be huge and they'll be murderous. It'll be awesome. Hi. Deanna, do you have a question for Greg while I'm scrolling?
Let's see here.
So this is a follow-on. This is one that you posted earlier. I'm going to ask this and then ignore it. But they asked, are the Akashians going to get the full crowdsourcing treatment? And if so, are Akashian archetypes going to be up for that? This might be a good place to announce something.
What?
Well, what I would announce is that the plan is that the build your own archetypes are a year 1 thing, and we won't be doing them in year 2. So Aurosh and Pan Pacifica are going to be people's kind of last opportunity to get those characters in that way.
Right.
Let's see. Will we see Tagara?
I don't know what that is.
And you call yourself a Torg writer. I don't know you.
There was a lot of backstory.
It's not in my sort of cribs notes on the year 2 stuff. But like I said, there's a whole lot of detail to be fleshed out between now and then. And also, again, it depends on, are we allowed to do that rollout thing of having the additional books essentially coming out as PDF first to suddenly come out as a full book later, in which case that significantly raises your odds.
So PK Levine asks a good one here. He says, are we going to see more adventures that feature uprooting Stella? It seems like it's a very important concept in the war, but it doesn't come up as much in the actual adventures. And I've got some comments on that too, but I'll let you guys go first.
Yeah, I would hope so. Year 2, we're moving into the war, and my concept currently for the campaign book is that split between rules and source material about how that theater of war opens up, then an adventure of the Storm Knights fighting in that theater of war. So clearly, uprooting Stellae should be a portion of at least 1 or 2 of those adventures, because you are now directly engaging the High Lords in battle. We've done enough dancing. It's time to start mixing it up.
Right. And so my plan when we were designing this essentially was, like Greg said, year 1 is where you set the canvas. So a lot of our year 1 adventures are exploring, fighting, generating the glory that you basically need to uproot those Stella later. And then we have our surveys go out, and one of the questions that we always ask on them is, how many glory events did you get? Is it 0, 1, more than 1, or whatever? And we would use that data to find our soft spots in year 2. And in year 2, that's where you start to see. Now, that might not mesh with Greg's war plans, but that was the original idea behind that. And I'm sure some version of that will probably exist in those war books.
There's a question that I really want to answer.
Do it. Go.
Okay, PK Levine asks, if we're going to see Cirilla, does that mean the Komagaz plague will be a thing? The answer is yes, because it's been on Earth ever since day one.
Yep, Komagaz
Yep.
already is a thing.
The
Yep.
contagion is the Komagaz.
Yep.
We're obviously going to go a lot more into that in the Pan Pacifica book.
Yep.
And it has been killing me for years keeping that silent.
And some people figured it out already. I remember on something like someone said, like, I bet it's this, and I'm like, I bet you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So as Marauder followed up on Tagara, I can say, if Tagara appears, it will be a cosm source. Yes. A darkness device, probably not. And that's why it's really heavily story dependent. And I can't, I don't, I want to sit down with the author and discuss this stuff before we commit him to a plan. But will there be a core Earth cosm source? Yes. Maybe not year 2, but there will be a core Earth cosm source.
Yeah. And I've always been, of course this could change, but I've always been pretty staunch on Earth not having a darkness.
Right.
Even as cool as High Lord of Earth was, don't get me wrong, that adventure was awesome. I don't think it fits what we've got developing.
Right. I think for my money, just spitballing this stuff, it's a response to being invaded, and it's not going to respond by saying, "Oh, what I need is more of the disease that's killing me." It's going to respond with something a little more helpful.
So, Ristar96, this is a comment, but I think it's a good one to share. He is mentioning Torganized Play on Facebook. I will second that. The Torganized Play folks are awesome. And, we're always hoping, we're going to do more official things with them. But they're great. So, definitely second the shout out to that. PK Levine asks, what's Barack Khan going to do with that reality bomb he got from Mobius?
He's going to use it. In all seriousness, that's what starts he's been having a hell of a time getting into Los Angeles, into Southern California. And so this is going to be what basically causes the invasion into Southern Cal. And then things happen. And then Malraux comes in a little bit later on, but yeah, he's basically starting to utilize his end of the alliance between Mobius and himself.
Superstar96 asks, so what's up with the English Channel and those Tharkoldu settlements? Is that something we're going to see more of in year 2?
It's not on the main line, but I mean, there's some stuff I may write and stick in. That's another reason we have things like Infiniverse Update. So will it be in a campaign book? Almost certainly not. Will it be an Infiniverse Update? I'd give it really good odds because I would like to write that.
Yeah.
So I'd say yes.
Yeah, and actually speaking of the Infiniverse Update, one of the things that we're looking into doing early on for that is to add some more information and crunch, so to speak, for the Living Land, given that it was the first one. And we've learned a lot of things about designing this game since that came out. So we're going to have some Living Land love in that one.
Awesome. So Ristar is asking, does the Delphi Council employ minions of Rex Stalic, reformed or not?
Again,
Stormbreak would.
Yeah. I would say, certainly not yet. And I think in the Soul of the Americas, we're going to be showing how I believe one of the factions in Soul of the Americas will nominally on the side of the Delphi Council will use Rex Stalic. The followers of Rex Stalic, yes.
Noise. Forbin Project asks, as the realms expand, will these create new war zones and so new play experiences within particular realms?
I'm thinking that would be part of the campaign books or the Infiniverse.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I'll ask, but I think that I agree.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got the Komagaz. Someone earlier up asked if Volkov, is that official or are we waiting for a poll for that? So I will mention this, right? So we have our high-end backer game at Gen Con, although it didn't happen this year because there was no Gen Con. We're still working on rescheduling that, basically the next time there's a Gen Con. But one of the draws for that, one of the things that makes that the premium experience and why it's worth the expense both for the backer and for us to put it on is that's the immediate feedback adventure. We'll do the polls, and if we've got time, they'll count and all that. But really, we generally go based on what the group at Gen Con did on those. And then there's other adventures that we do that spread that out a little bit. But yeah, Volkov, that's been in the books as of 2019.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
I can respond to PK11. He says, I don't feel like anything about Rex Stalic is that bad that he's off the table. I mean, necromancers and ex-demons, etc. I can ask. However, if you are a Delphi Council or affiliated organization, that social level is a hell of a problem. Maintaining command and control over followers of Rex Stalic, it's one of the. It's almost like the Living Lands version of corruption for Core Earth, because these guys could be so useful, they're just not. They're just not going to help you,
right?
So.
And I would actually submit that based on the setup that we've already done, they could already have agents, right? Because we've got Operation Eris. And Operation Eris is something, it's kind of like, it's hidden in plain sight. It got mentioned in the very back of the core rulebook under John Wick's character. And it was something like when we were talking with John and we made it up for John, and then we kind of ran with it. And it's a component of the Delphi Council where they have Stormers on the payroll. And those Stormers will be bad guys and do their thing, but they're feeding the Delphi Council information. And in certain crisis moments, they can turn, they can flip. And that's useful for Torg GMs because if your party's about to die, you can make one of the bad guys be one of these Operation Eris plants and help them out, at a crucial moment. And vice versa, one of the problems that can be with recurring villains is, well, we just killed them all. These are bad guys. Forget them. It's a war. It doesn't make sense to take prisoners. But Operation Eris means well, maybe that Stormer is actually working for us. Even if he did bad things, do we kill him? And that added that element to that. And that's something when we do the Core Earth book that we'll engage with more. It won't be hidden in plain sight. It'll be specifically stated so people know it. But until we get there, we kind of have to remind people, by the way, that's a thing. So we could already have a couple of Rex Stalic worshippers that work for Operation Eris. Not officially, but unofficially, absolutely. Let's see.
Hey Greg, because we're about to run out of time, did you want to reveal anything about our plans with regards to rules?
I think I touched on it very briefly. And presuming that we're allowed to do the PDF rollout to become a book later, a la Relic of Power, then there will be a Torg 1.5. added in as we move along to clean up some of the things, clarify some of the things, embellish some of the things, and that in the end you'll have a product. And that will be in the year 2 pipeline. Anything else you want to add, Deanna?
No, other than I'm nervous.
Well, yeah. Well, one of the reasons we do it as a PDF is it's, those things are kind of fungible. It might turn out to be, oh, that's not as large as we thought. It gets bundled in with, hey, look, it's Akasha and Torg 1.5. We don't honestly know at this point, because there's particularly where we're interacting and it's evolving. We can plan the year 2 campaign ourselves relatively well. Torg 1.5 is going to be back and forth with authors and fans and Discord. So you really can't. I can't promise Marcus it'll be 64 pages.
Yeah.
So
So real quick, Casarella asked, Kadandra, are we going to see Kadandra appear in Torg Eternity at all?
Yes. Kadandra is one of the cosms that was invaded and conquered by Pan Pacific. And it is currently being occupied by Pan Pacific. So, although we won't go into too much detail on it right now, it's that's where Dr. Hachimera 1 and Dr. Hachimera 2 come from. And so, but like that said, we're not going to do what is its reality, because it's conquered. It's Pan Pacifica. But in a future thing, we might do what its reality used
to. So let's see here. Ristar asks, this is an important one to mention real quick. What's up with the Ulisses Con in Vegas in 2021? We have not announced anything about that, as everyone knows, with the current situation, but we're kind of waiting for daily updates on that. We are very close to the time where we have to announce one way or the other. So please stay tuned, but odds aren't good. I'm saying on the side, right? Like just the way where things are at right now with Las Vegas and everything else. I don't think it's going to happen. We haven't announced it yet. Stay tuned for that announcement, but let's see here. We are almost out of time. I'm scrolling through. I apologize if I didn't get to your question. There's some great ones, and there's some great discussion on the side, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to these and listening to us blab.
I might answer some of those questions in the Discord.
Nice.
If I know what the answer is.
In the forum. All right, cool. I think we're out of time. So last words. Deanna first.
I am excited and nervous, which is a good thing to be, I suppose. I mean, we've been working on this for 5 years now, and we're ready to take the next step. And essentially, the first year was setting the table, and now we're going to flip it. So, but actually, one really quick note, because it has been asked before about the Gotman. There's another spoiler for Relics of Power. Assuming that the heroes do the right thing, the Gotman is essentially imprisoned for a bit of time at the end of Relics of Power. It is not going to be a long time. It's going to be 6 weeks, weeks instead of months. It's basically just enough to get the other High Lords to go, the boss is gone, now we can, fight. And so that's essentially the trigger that gets them all to start, fighting each other, and then the Gotman comes back almost immediately.
Nice. Oh my God. Sir has the best question ever, and this is a good one to wrap up on. So, So, Greg, last words, and then I'll do this question.
What question are you?
Well, so I was gonna. Did you have a like a last?
Wrap up. Oh, no, I basically like. This has been eating at my brain for about 6 months, and so the fact that I think we've got a pretty exciting way forward, and I agree. I'm nervous because if there isn't part of the Highwire Act, we're probably not pushing the game where it needs to go. I feel this is the right amount of Highwire for what we're trying to do.
Awesome. So the outro question from Indra, looking back at year one as a designer, what was your favorite moment from year one?
So mine actually is when we came up with the ending of Relics of Power Rita, because I had been racking my brain how to come up with something that was suitably epic for that kind of adventure. And that ending literally was, I think, 3 days before I had to get the final text in. And so it's one of those things where that was not the original ending. But
right,
and
I
it
wouldn't
came
let
out
you
from a
take the
lot of
Gauntman completely out.
Yeah.
Like, he's important. We're not taking him out in year one. Like
I know. Well, that was part of it. Was that all along we were like, we're not doing it, and then finally it was like, well, what if we do it? Greg,
I had two. One was getting When Cosms Collide out the door, because that's the first book I had written in like 20 years. So I was like, I can still write occasionally, yay! And also that kick started the year two ideas. How am I going to start, messing with the way reality works in the game? And the other one was almost at the opposite end of the spectrum, having some very general guidelines for a trifling matter. And watching how that came together, it was like I got to be a fan of just this process going forward, because that adventure is so creepy and so cool. I was like, oh, this is so neat. So I like the fact that, because there's a lot of, any job's got grind, but be able to grind and also be a fan that, feeds my fuel again, that was perfect. That was just perfect.
Nice. And my two were, one, nuking Tharcold, the fact that I got away with it, Ray.
I mean, that wasn't even an argument on that one, was it?
No, but it could have been. Right?
Yeah.
And then the other one was when I pitched that the Contagion was the Komagaz. And Shane's like, well, I mean, that'd be cool, but only if we can make it make sense. And I'm like, no, it already makes sense. Step one, step two, step three, step four. And he's like, oh my God, yep, okay, do it.
Yeah. And the thing I love about that is that opens up so much for the threats that we'll be seeing in Pan Pacifica. That, like, if it wasn't for that, I don't think Pan Pacifica would be nearly as interesting as it's going to end up being.
Oh yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for participating, asking questions, being here, playing Torg. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.